Warning: the Curious Native podcast contains mature topics and themes that are intended for an older youth and adult audience. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey, welcome to the Curious Native podcast. I'm your host, Hunnasmak, and in today's episode, we'll be discussing a topic that has, long plagued the entertainment industry. Whitewashing in animation and live-action films and TV shows. We'll analyze the devastating impact this practice can have on both people of color and performers. Whitewashing, just to summarize it before we get into the episode, is the practice of casting white actors in the roles of characters that were originally meant to be portrayed by people of color. This practice has been, prevalent in both live action and in animated films, and it has taken away opportunities for performers of colors to depict characters from their own cultures and backgrounds. Many recent examples having surfaced in the media, including Emma Stone's casting as half-Asian, half-Hawaiian character in Aloha, and Johnny Depp's portrayal of a Native American character in The Lone Ranger. The consequences of whitewashing extend beyond performers of color. It also creates a shortage of representation in the film industry, with people of color being denied the chance to see themselves reflected on screen. In this episode, we'll be discussing how whitewashing impacts the way we see ourselves and each other. We'll analyze how Hollywood's penchant for casting white actors in certain roles reinforces the idea that white Americans are the default. So, if you're interested, please keep on listening. For starters, what is whitewashing? Whitewashing is when a character who's supposed to be played from a non-white background is played by a white actor. This has been an issue in Hollywood for a long time and is one of the ones that have received a lot of attention in recent years. When an animated character is whitewashed, it means that the character is designed to look like a person from, they're being designed to look like a person from a non-white background, yet their voice is provided by, a white actor. Some examples of whitewashing in animation include, Disney's film Aladdin. In the film, the character of Aladdin is... I'm also talking about multiple forms of whitewashing. May I just add, this isn't just one. I am talking about whitewashing in animation, in voice acting, in live action acting. So just preference this. I'm going through different ones. Some examples of whitewashing in animation include the Disney film Aladdin. In the film, the character of Aladdin is from the Middle East, yet the actor who provided his voice was white. This is problematic because it sends the message that only white actors are good enough to play lead roles. And I think that is something that has, that's something that's very much prevalent in the Hollywood and just acting setting and that film industry in general. Another example which is one that I didn't even know Ghost in the Shell was based on it, like an anime or nothing like that. Is Ghost in the Shell. In the original Japanese anime, the character of Motoko was Japanese. I hope I said that right. However, in Hollywood-produced live-action film role, the role was given to Scarlett Johansson, a white American actress. Whitewashing is not limited to Hollywood either. It has been an issue in the animation industry for many years. Examples include Avatar: The Last Airbender, where the main character, Aang, was supposed to be from a non-white background, yet the actor who voiced him was white. The problem with whitewashing is that, it perpetuates the idea that white actors are more talented or, very, very much, this next line, or attractive, which is very much like upholding Eurocentric beauty standards. It also sends the message that only white people are worthy of leading roles, which ignores the talent and potential of people from, diverse backgrounds. If you hear dogs barking, I apologize. I don't know. I can't control nature. To continue, one reason that whitewashing is such, a concern is that representation matters. When young people see characters who look like them in movies and TV shows, it helps them to feel like they belong. This is especially true for children from non-white backgrounds who are often underrepresented in media. Another reason that whitewashing is so problematic is that it erases the experiences of people of color from, the mainstream media. When white actors are used to voice characters who are supposed to be from a non-white background, it erases the cultural identity of those characters. Whitewashing, is problematic. It reinforces stereotypes when non-white when non-white actors are, characters are voiced by white actors. It sends the message that these characters are not important enough to have actors from the appropriate background voice them. Also, I apologize if I clear my voice throughout this episode a few times. I feel like maybe I'm losing my voice, but I'm not 100% certain. My voice is usually always a little bit raspy, but I just feel like it's a little bit extra raspier than usual. Whitewashing in animation, it's a real issue that has been perpetuated in Hollywood for many years. It marginalizes the talent and potential of actors from diverse backgrounds and erases the cultural identities of non-white characters. It is important that the entertainment industry takes steps to address this problem and ensure that representation is more accurate and inclusive. When it comes to Hollywood, whitewashing, it's not just about animation. It can also take place in live-action film and TV productions where characters are portrayed by actors who are not from the same racial or ethnic background. This is particularly harmful because, it perpetuates harmful stereotypes and sends the message that their stories are not important enough to be told by the right people. One of the egregious examples of whitewashing in live-action film, especially in casting, is Emma Stone in Aloha. Stone played a character who, according to the film storyline, was supposed to be a quarter Chinese and a quarter Hawaiian. This is an example of whitewashing by proxy, where a character who is of mixed race is portrayed by a white actor, effectively erasing the character's non-white heritage. Whitewashing also happens in TV shows where non-white characters are often portrayed by white actors. In the popular TV series The Last Kingdom, I was just making sure I got that right, which takes place during the Viking Age. Most of the characters are supposed to be of Nordic or Saxon descent, yet most of the actors who play these characters are white. This very much sends a message that people of color did not exist during this time period, which is simply just not true. When I first got into the occult world too, and witch talk was very much big at that time, you would see that a lot too, where racist Nordic occultists would say these racist shit and like fucking saying that there was no black Nordic people or Vikings or anything like that. And it's just like, sir, the Vikings were some fucking assholes who went around the sea fucking pillaging and raping and colonizing. I don't know if they're really the best message that you really, I don't know. I don't know. There's just still issues with, they wouldn't have been all white, nor would the blonde hair, blue eyes. That wouldn't have been as common back then. At least within, the Vikings. Whitewashing, also happens in TV shows where non-white characters are often played by white actors. Let's see, I have my notes all mixed up. Okay, here it is. Moreover, whitewashing is not only robs actors from diverse backgrounds of opportunities, but also sends a message to the audience that actors from certain backgrounds are not good enough to play leading roles. This reinforces negative stereotypes about people of color and can have a harmful impact on young viewers who are exposed to these messages from a young age. Additionally, whitewashing in live-action film and TV productions can have a major impact on the representation of people of color in the entertainment industry. When non-white characters are played by white actors, it can be much harder for actors from diverse backgrounds to land roles in the industry. Moreover, whitewashing often results in the erasure of non-white characters or characters of mixed race heritage. This means that audiences are less likely to see characters who reflect the diversity of their communities on screen, which can have a negative impact on young viewers' sense of self-worth and belonging. Furthermore, the harm caused by whitewashing extends beyond the entertainment industry itself. When non-white characters are portrayed by white actors, it reinforces harmful stereotypes that can have a negative impact on real people's lives. For example, the character of Apu on The Simpsons was voiced by a white actor for many years, perpetuating negative stereotypes about South Asians that can have real-world consequences such as racial profiling and discrimination. Another harmful impact of whitewashing is that it can lead to an erasure of cultural identities and erasure of communities. When non-white characters are played by white actors, their stories and experiences are often altered or erased entirely. This sends the message that cultural identities of non-white people are not important enough to be represented in Hollywood or represented in the entertainment industry accurately or respectfully. Moreover, whitewashing has a significant impact on the mental health of people of color. When they see non-white characters being played by white actors, it sends the message that their stories are not important enough to be told by actors who share their backgrounds. This can have a significant impact on their sense of self-worth and mental health. In conclusion, whitewashing in live-action film and TV is a significant issue with, consequences for people of color and, performers of color. It perpetuates negative stereotypes, reinforces institutional racism in the entertainment industry, and harms mental health of people of color. It's important that we, continue to advocate for greater representation and accurate representation of diverse communities in the entertainment industry to help combat the harmful impact of whitewashing. Okay, so now that you kind of have a basic understanding of what whitewashing is, let's get into some more specific examples. The character of Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender was originally intended to be portrayed by a darker-skinned Inuit or indigenous actress, but the part was eventually given to Janet Varney, I hope I got that correct, who is white. The character of Katara comes from a waterbender tribe in the show, which is heavily based on Inuit and other indigenous cultures, specifically Arctic. By casting a white actress in a role that was intended to be played by an indigenous actress, Avatar: The Last Airbender missed the opportunity to have an authentic representation and instead perpetuated the erasure of cultures in mainstream media, which I'm not going to talk about in this episode because I'm going to do a sequel to this episode because it is pretty hot. I don't know if I'm able to get into everything today. But I do want to talk about Sokka soon, especially in that new live-action show that's coming out, the Avatar live-action series. So, yeah, I'll eventually talk about that. I was going to do a game on the show, and he was going to be a part of it. Not the actor, but the character being portrayed by that white actor. I was going to have another native come on, and we were going to play a game. But unfortunately, that episode had to get canceled for now. Hopefully we could get that back on. I was supposed to do another episode too, but that unfortunately had to be canceled to family issues. So, yeah. Another character that has been whitewashed in Avatar: The Last Airbender is Toph. The character was originally meant to be darker skinned, but the part was Toph. I am mixing up my characters. Jesus Christ. Sokka. He is a darker Inuit character, but he ended up being portrayed by a white actor as well. I don't have too much notes on Sokka right now because I said I was going to do a sequel, so just stay tuned for that one. But another one in in Dragon Ball Evolution, the live-action adaptation of Dragon Ball, the lead character Goku is portrayed as Japanese in the original anime, was played by Justin Chatwin, who is white. The casting decision perpetuated harmful stereotypes first and foremost about people of color and reinforced the idea that white actors are more suitable for leading roles even when they do not match the racial and ethnic backgrounds of characters they are playing. Another example of a character, I already mentioned that one. Another example, I was going to bring up Motoko from Ghost in the Shell again. Like I said, my notes are a bit mixed up, and it is super hot, so Fresno is having an extreme heat wave right now. Another example is DC Comics character Jinx and her adaptation in Teen Titans. Jinx is a character in DC Comics and one of the founding members of the Teen Titans in the comics, which only fake fans don't know. I seen a Reddit thread of people like, oh my god, I did not know this. Like, what the fuck? How did you? That's like, I'm not going to get into it. It'll get me mad. Jeez. However, the animated adaptation of the character in Teen Titans series on Cartoon Network in the early 2000s created a new iteration of Jinx. This version has a different backstory and appearance with pink hair and white skin. The decision to whitewash Jinx's character in the animated show is problematic and definitely harmful to people of Southeast Asian descent who are historically underrepresented in Western media. Additionally, children of Southeast Asian descent who do not see themselves represented in Jinx's character may internalize this as meaning that their identities are not important or valued in society. This can cause long-lasting harm to their self-esteem and mental health. Honestly, this next one that I'm going to talk about this is one that was kind of like, this is one that I always kind of heard about, especially growing up. But I really didn't know too much about it until I started researching for this episode. And it's just, honestly, let's just jump right into this one, as it's absolutely crazy to me. The whitewashing of Betty Boop. The whitewashing of Betty Boop is particularly, harmful to women, especially those who are jazz singers. Betty Boop has always been seen as a caricature of a black jazz singer with exaggerated features and clothing that were commonly associated with black jazz singer personas. By removing the blackness from Betty Boop's character, it erases the history and contributions of black women in jazz and perpetuates negative stereotypes about them. And I know I'm getting into the underrepresentation of black jazz singers first before I get into the whitewashing of Betty Boop, but this is just preference. Black women jazz singers have made, important contributions to American music and culture. The underrepresentation of black women in media, is a symptom of white supremacy. The lack of representation and misrepresentation of black women in media has a significant impact on society, including normalizing the whitewashing of characters like Betty Boop. It perpetuates the idea that black women are not valuable or deserving of representation in media. This creates a culture that allows for the erasure of black women and reduces their voice and experiences to stereotypes and caricatures. By erasing the blackness from Betty Boop's character, it disrespects and dismisses the significant contributions of black women jazz singers. This perpetuates the idea that black people, and black women in particular, are not valued or respected in society. Betty Boop, was inspired by several black female performers of the time, most notably Esther Jones, also known as Baby Esther, or most, her Boop Oop a Doop, that was her little thing. And then I am going to mention that she was at least partially, at least historians believe, was responsible for the inspiration of Betty Boop, but at the same time, she stole Esther's mannerisms, her complete persona. So anything that inspired Betty Boop's character was stolen from Esther. And the person I'm speaking of is Helen Kane. Baby Esther was known for her unique singing style, which included a boop boop, a doop, sounds, and other scatting techniques. Her performance often included a signature baby voice that was high-pitched and childlike. The singing style and voice would go on to be imitated by many performers, including Helen Kane in particular. Helen Kane was a white performer who became famous for imitating Baby Esther's singing style and voice. Kane rose to fame in the late 1920s and was quickly labeled the boop up a doop girl. Kane stole from, they said adopted, but let's be real, she stole many of Baby Esther's mannerisms and vocal styles, including her signature, boop up doop catchphrase. She even wore a similar hairstyle, which included a tightly curled bob. Kane went on to star in several films and became one of the most popular performers of the era. In 1930, animator Max Fletcher debuted the character of Betty Boop in a cartoon called Dizzy Dishes. Betty Boop's signature voice was inspired by the baby voice used by Esther and Helen Kane. Betty Boop quickly became a sensation and appeared in several cartoons throughout the 1930s. During this time, her voice became more distinct and recognizable, and she began to use her own catchphrases, including a boop oop, a doop, and oop boop. In 1934, Helen Kane filed a lawsuit against Max and Paramount Pictures, claiming that Betty Boop was a ripoff of her own persona. Kane alleged that Betty Boop was a deliberate caricature of her, and the character's appearance, mannerisms, and voice was copied from her. Kane's lawsuit was ultimately unsuccessful. No fucking shit. As it was determined that her claims were unfounded and that Betty Boop was not direct copying of her. In fact, there was other performers who also used the baby voice and boop boop doop catchphrase before Kane, such as Annette Hanshaw and Clara Bow. Despite the setback, Kane continued to insist, that Betty Boop was a ripoff of her persona for many years. This controversy has continued to be debated by fans and historians of animation, with some arguing that Kane's claims were invalid and that Betty Boop was indeed not based on her, or at least not entirely. In the long run, Betty Boop's history only reinforces, the notion that the contributions of black artists are often appropriated and exploited by the mainstream media with no recognition or compensation given to their originators. The whitewashing of Betty Boop is an example of how cultural appropriation can harm and erase culture's contributions to the world of art. If filmmakers decide to keep the original race of a character, they must acknowledge the character's culture, background, and heritage. They can do this by hiring consultants or finding performers with the appropriate cultural background for the role. This way, they can avoid perpetuating harmful stereotypes and portray the character accurately. Additionally, filmmakers should prioritize telling stories that are culturally appropriate anyways. They should avoid appropriating other cultures' stories without, sensitivity, respect. This means that filmmakers must have the appropriate cultural knowledge and understandings to depict cultures accurately and develop stories authentically. Productions must also commit to fair casting, which encourages diversity and inclusivity by eliminating implicit biases and unfair practices, which, everyone gets an equal chance to audition for roles. This issue of not casting performers of colors is still prevalent and is essential for filmmakers to explore the root causes of the problem and to address them. To conclude, whitewashers of non-white characters is not a new thing to the entertainment industry. Making inclusive casting choices, prioritizing cultural authenticity of a character or story, In conclusion, whitewashing of characters has been a troubling issue that continues to prevent performers of color from receiving equal opportunities and representation in the film industry. It is a racist act that perpetuates harmful stereotypes and marginalizes performers of color. The film industry must be held accountable for the lack of representation and diversity in its productions and must make meaningful efforts to create a more inclusive and equitable environment. It is unacceptable to perpetuate racism and marginalize performers of color in the film industry. While progress has been made, more action must be taken to eliminate whitewashing and encourage diverse casting choices. With that being said, though, if you like today's episode and would like more like this, please feel free to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Also, follow me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. I'm also on Threads and Blue Sky. Hunnasmak at the end. Also follow the official Twitter podcast page at TCN Pod. The Curious Native Podcast is over on Threads as well under that name. Everything will be linked down below, including all my sources for this episode. And with that being said, I'm Hunnasmak at the end, and this has been the Curious Native Podcast.